Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Good afternoon. This is Mr. Main checking in with you on our week 2 remote learning extravaganza. We are in the 12th week of the semester, obviously. This is the second week of remote learning. This is Complet 10. This is my email right here in case you guys forgot it or need it. Um, I don't think you did forget it, however, though, because I've seen a lot of good feedback from you guys this past week in our first week of remote learning. I know it's a huge transition. It's a huge transition for everybody, for administration, for teachers, for you students, for your parents. Everyone involved is impacted in some way, shape, or form. I'm really proud of you guys for the way you have transitioned into this adversity. I'm seeing a lot of good results with the online learning at this point. So thank you guys for giving me your best effort. I really do appreciate it. That is my celebration as of right now. So continue to do that, you guys. You are making me proud. Um, as always, for this remote learning, my office hours are Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Again, that is not a set in stone. You can only email me at that time, kind of thing. You can always email and reach out. I will be available often. During this Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 is where I will be guaranteed to be sitting by my laptop with my email open, so you can get a response back rather quick. But I will email back whenever I can at any point in time. So don't feel like you can only email then. Um, as I was doing some just internet pondering this week, I found this quote from Maya Angelou. It says, "Every storm runs out of rain." And I think that's super fitting for us, and it's something we need to hear at this point in time. A lot of you guys have mentioned you're bored or wanting to come back to school. And as a teacher, that's super exciting for me to hear that you guys want to come back, whether that be for the social aspect or academic aspect, or maybe a mix of both. Um, I miss seeing you guys every day. So I hope you are staying confident, staying positive, and just know that in due time, whenever that time may be, we will get out of this pandemic we are in. We will see the light at the end of the tunnel. So if you are with me, shake your head in agreement. Shaking your head, yes. Breakdown for remote learning. This is stuff we went over last week, so it's review. Obviously, we're operating on a weekly basis. Each week, we'll have all the slides uploaded with all of the lessons, the assignments, and learning targets for the week. I will have then a video walkthrough where I break down all the slides, the week agenda, the learning targets, and the weekly assignments. Obviously, you are watching that right now, so continue to watch these videos as you navigate through the slides. I see the views on the video continue to increase, so that's a good sign. For me, it shows that you're watching, so continue to do that. There will be approximately 2 to 3 assignments per week due each Friday through Google Classroom. And as always, if you need extensions or need clarification on anything, that is my email right there, mmain@d51schools.org. Um, don't be a stranger. You guys have done a really good job with reaching out to me, so I appreciate it. I'm always here for you, even if it is online. Um, this week's agenda, we're going to start by reviewing those concepts of rhetoric and logos, ethos, pathos from last week. Last week, we just really scratched the surface barely with this whole concept of rhetorical analysis. Today we are going to, or this week rather, we're going to dive in a little deeper into this concept of rhetorical analysis through this concept of soapstone. And I say that now, soapstone, and you probably have no idea what that is. It's a way to begin a rhetorical analysis, and I'm going to give some notes on that. And then I'm going to do a walkthrough analysis with a soapstone for a text that I found this week as well. After I model that with you, I'm going to turn the reins over to you to complete a soapstone, followed by a series of analysis questions for Lou Gehrig's Farewell to Baseball. It's a short address, but it is chock full of great moves as far as writing and speech making goes. And then lastly, to tie out the end of the week, we have our second article of the week. This is the article of the week number 2, and we're going to respond to that as well. So if you're looking at the assignments due today, or at the end of this week, I should say, it is the Lou Gehrig soapstone analysis found on Google Classroom and the article of the week number 2. I'm actually just going to label it the Lou Gehrig analysis. So you will see that on Google Classroom. And obviously we have our response to the article of the week number 2. Both things are found on Google Classroom. If you need any help with these things, please let me know. The learning targets are as followed. We can hopefully by the end of the week review the concepts of rhetoric, rhetorical analysis, logos, ethos, and pathos. I'm hoping then by the end of this week you can define elements of a soapstone and other rhetorical devices. Also identify elements of soapstone and other rhetorical devices in a text. And then for our article of the week, hopefully you can read an article based on a current event. It will be COVID-19 related, but we are going to take a different approach with it this week. And then the last learning target for the week, I can demonstrate critical thinking about an article through my article response. Those are the learning targets of the week, the 5 that we are condensing down and focusing on for this week 2 of remote learning. Last week, I introduced this concept of the rhetorical triangle in terms of rhetoric. We identified rhetoric as the art of persuasive or effective speech making or writing or any form of communication or mode of communication. Speakers, writers, authors, they use rhetoric strategies to convey their message. They are all rooted then in these 3 modes of persuasion. Now, some texts may have multiple modes going on. Some may just focus on one. But it boils down to these 3 things. There is that sort of credibility piece, referring to somebody's credibility, and also kind of touching on the values that that person has and then relating them back to the audience and their values. This is things like when you see a toothpaste commercial and it says, as a doctor, I recommend you use Colgate whitening strips. It's simple, but that use of credibility ties into their ethos or establishes their sort of with itness to deliver a message. On the other end, then, we have the emotional effect of a speaker's words. This is known as pathos. This is like those ASPCA commercials where they tie you in with those puppies who are cage-ridden and they say, for just 50 cents a day, donate to save this poor, poverty-stricken puppy from his grim state. It sounded terrible, but you get the point. They're using these emotions, they're tugging at the audience's heartstrings to get you to do something. Their purpose is to persuade you to donate. And they're more successful at doing that when they tie in the audience's emotions. And then lastly, we have logos, otherwise known as logical reasoning. This is where statistics come into play, numbers, percentages. This is where like dry facts sort of support your argument and your purpose. Aristotle, Greek philosopher, he was the one who kind of coined these terms, logos, ethos, pathos, and he believes that the strongest form of persuasion is using logos or logical reasoning. So take that for what it's worth. His opinion isn't law, but I think it's important to know. Now, we don't just stop there when we talk about rhetoric. It's not just logos, ethos, pathos. We identified rhetoric as effective persuasive speaking or writing. So then if we take that a little further, what is a rhetorical analysis? In its most simple form, a rhetorical analysis is a deeper look into a piece of writing, like a speech, a novel, a public service announcement, song lyrics, poems, etc. It's more than just reading for pleasure at this point. If you take a look at this question here in bold, we want to discover what the author's purpose is. Is it to inform you about something? Is it to persuade you to do something, to buy something? Is it to entertain you about something? What is the author's purpose, and how does he or she achieve that purpose? The how does he or she achieve? That is really the heart of rhetorical analysis. To answer the how, essentially, we need to look at the various rhetorical devices presented in the text. Now, if you're thinking, Mr. Main, what the heck is a rhetorical device? I guarantee you probably have already heard of some, but we are going to go over some in this video as well and on these slides. If you take AP Lang next year, you will hear a lot about rhetorical analysis. That is a lot of what is at the heart of that course. The motto for rhetorical analysis is, if you don't remember anything about rhetorical analysis, remember what this question says. It is, what is the author's purpose, and how does he or she achieve that purpose? So far in the year, we've talked about identifying author's purpose. We did that with Of Mice and Men. But now we're going to look at how do the rhetorical strategies and rhetorical devices achieve or reinforce or support the author's purpose. So when we do that, the very first thing we need to do before we dive into nitty-gritty rhetorical choices in a text, we begin with a soapstone. A soapstone analysis helps us get a closer look into the rhetorical situation or the rhetorical framework of a text. Soapstone is an acronym, and a lot of it is revolving around this idea of understanding the context of the speech, novel, song, poem, whatever the case may be. You kind of have to know everything going on around the piece to fully understand the purpose of said piece. So as you can see, this is kind of an extension to that modes of persuasion with logos, ethos, pathos. We're adding more things to this rhetorical triangle that we introduced last week through this concept of soapstone. The S, and these are the notes. I'm going to try to go through these pretty quickly. They're pretty self-explanatory, and you will be able to go back to these. So the S in a soapstone is the speaker. This essentially is the one delivering the speech, the text, the novel, whatever the case may be. It's important to know about the speaker and to maybe identify if they have the credibility to talk on a certain topic. Knowing a bit about the speaker can address their background and maybe potential bias that they may have towards a subject. So it's important to know who is delivering this message. The occasion, this is probably one of the more important and one of the more complex, abstract terms on here. This is essentially the time, the place, the context, or the current situation of the piece. It's otherwise known as the genesis of the writing. Essentially, think about these questions. Why did the author sit down and write this? And what was stirring the pot for the writer to write this. Um, don't think this is different than author's purpose. The purpose is to convey a message, and then the occasion is explaining basically why they had to give this message. So to fully understand the author's purpose, you have to know what the occasion is of the piece. I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, my mom and we took our dog on a walk, and we were walking through the neighborhood park, and there were a bunch of, how do I say it, dog landmines all over the grass, if you're catching my drift. And there were no like cleanup stations in this park. And my mom got super mad about this. So she took the initiative and she wrote a letter to the HOA saying that there's a bunch of dog poop in this community park. There are no trash cans or cleanup stations for this. There needs to be this implemented as soon as possible. And so her purpose in that case was to get some trash cans put into this park. That is not the occasion or the context of the piece or the exigence. The occasion was because, or why did she sit down to write this? Well, because she was living in the neighborhood and there was a bunch of dog poop everywhere. She wanted a clean park. That is the occasion. That is what was stirring the pot for my mother to write that letter to the HOA. This term is also referred to as exigence. Just try to remember the occasion and exigence as something stirring the pot for the writer. If you don't get it this first time, we will have plenty of other times to practice with this. The audience, self-explanatory, the group of readers to whom the piece is directed. The purpose, we've talked about author's purpose through this whole year, beginning in Unit 1. This is the reasoning behind the text or what the author wants the audience to take away. Remember, this comes in a to plus a verb format. So is it to inform something? Is it to persuade something? Is it to frighten something? Is it to condemn? In the case of my mother's example with the dog poop, her purpose was to persuade the HOA to put in trash cans for the dog park or whatever the case may be. That is her purpose for that. Moving forward, lastly, for this acronym piece is the subject, the S, the general topic, content, and ideas contained in the text. This is just a few words or a short phrase. And then we have the tone. So we've talked about tone as well in our class. This is essentially the speaker's attitude towards the subject. It's talking about how the author feels, really, and we can analyze tone and identify their tone through this formula. The diction, if we're looking back, we know that diction is specific detail, or word choice, I should say, sorry. Diction is the specific word choice in a text, those singular words that stand out. And then the details are more of the phrases, whether they be phrases that reveal imagery, that reveal purpose, whatever the case may be. Those word choice sections and those specific details in the text ultimately show us the tone. Now, if you click here, there's a handout provided for you. This is a handout that I basically took onto a Google Doc. It's the PDF that I gave you at the beginning of the year. It doesn't look as accessible on this Google Doc as the PDF does. You should have this already, but if you don't, essentially it's a list of positive tone words, negative tone words, and humorous tone words, and neutral, kind of in the middle tone words. It's not limited to these. There are definitely more, but this would be a good starting point for you. If you are having trouble finding tone in a text, you can refer back to this Google Doc. Like I said, though, you probably have that somewhere. Maybe it's buried in your backpack or in your folder. It will look a little different, but the same content is there. So now we've identified the rhetorical framework or the rhetorical situation of a text or whatever the case may be through the soapstone. Now we get to look at rhetorical devices. These are deliberate choices that the author uses within their writing to strengthen their purpose. Firstly, we have diction. We know what that is at this point. It's just specific singular words, individual words that the author uses. Imagery, this form of figurative language creates um, an image in the author or in the reader's mind through the senses. This is like describing what someone may see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. Using imagery is a rhetorical device to help convey meaning or purpose. If we think about this piece here, from the song Today Was a Good Day by Ice Cube, he says, just waking up in the morning, gotta thank God, I don't know, but today seems kind of odd. No barking from the dog, no smog, and mama cooked the breakfast with no hog. Very elementary and basic use of imagery here, but it paints a picture of his morning through this sense of the dog not barking. When you think of a dog barking, you think of like something out of the ordinary, maybe like someone's at the door or whatever the case may be. But that's not happening in this case. The dog's just hanging out, and it's kind of reinforcing this sort of peaceful start to the day. Moving forward, we have this term anaphora. This is essentially just repetition of a word or phrase beginning at or at the beginning of two or more clauses, lines, or sentences. If you don't remember this funky term anaphora, just remember that it is repetition. Um, we have this Tale of Two Cities example with Charles Dickens. It says, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." That repetition of "it was" times. It has meaning within the larger text, which we're not going to go over now because that would take forever because it's a long novel. But it's sort of that repetition trying to kind of like draw out a point or a fact that the author or speaker is trying to make. Apostrophe, this is more than just the punctuation mark. This is addressing an absent or imaginary person or personified abstraction such as liberty or love. It's not limited to liberty or love, but there is something being addressed that really cannot answer back. In this Kendrick Lamar example, he says, "Streets don't fail me now. They tell me it's a new gang in town." He is talking to the quote unquote streets. Obviously, they can't literally answer him back, but he's kind of lamenting to them to basically keep him safe from this new gang. I use these rap examples because I think it helps point out the fact that there are a lot of creative people who use these devices in many modes. It's not just a poem or novel. No, it's more. It's in films, it's in music, it's in so much more. Um, Syntax is one of the harder ones, I would say, to analyze, but it's basically just the arrangement of words and phrases to create well-formed sentences in a language. So say an author's writing something and they're using really long, drawn out, almost run-on sentences for 3 sentences straight, and then they just drop in a short 3-word sentence. That isn't on accident, that is on purpose. What is the purpose of that short sentence wedged in between multiple run-on sentences. They do that purposefully to convey an idea or reinforce their purpose. Another form of syntax is this parallel structure, where a writer or speaker uses the same pattern or words to show that two or more words are equal to each other. An example, many people like riding, hiking, biking, and swimming. People don't like one more than the other. They like them equally the same. And I know that because this parallel structure that is addressed here, it's not showing which one people like more. It's basically just stating, hey, people like all of these things. And we have an allusion. I know we've talked about this in class as well. An allusion is an expression designed to call something to mind without mentioning it explicitly. It's an indirect or passing reference to someone, something, or some event that took place. It's, in its simplest form, a reference to something in pop culture, whether that be through a film, a book, a TV show, a song, whatever the case may be. I've used the Romeo example, I believe, to say someone is a real Romeo. We might think that he is a romantic type of person. We don't know that because the name Romeo. We know that because of the allusion to the play Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. That is a simple example of this allusion concept. And we've heard of these terms, obviously, simile and metaphor. They're both ways authors and writers or directors, whoever it may be, they use these to compare things. When you use a simile, you say something is like or as something else. Life is like a roller coaster. And if you do a metaphor, you basically just paint a picture by saying that something is something else. Life is a roller coaster. Metaphor. Life is like a roller coaster. Simile. Alrighty. So I did go through that kind of quickly. If you have questions about those, reach out to me, rewatch this video, take a look at the slides again. The modes of assistance are there for you. So I'm going to model a soapstone and rhetorical choices with you guys. I found this really short speech from actor Matthew McConaughey. He gave this on March 18th, and it's a public address to humanity about the coronavirus, COVID-19. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds. I have the transcript of what he says on a document that we're going to look at in a second. But right now, I'm just going to click the video here, and then we're going to analyze it together. If it will load.
We were just attacked. That's right, about 4 a.m., the printing press of our Hong Kong edition was visited by 4
Hey everybody, McConaughey here. Just want to say in these crazy times that we're in with the coronavirus, let's take care of ourselves and each other. Let's not go to the lowest common denominator and get paranoid. Let's do our due diligence, take the precautions we need to take care of ourselves and those of us around us. Right now, more than ever before, we're all more dependent on each other than we ever have been. We have an enemy in coronavirus that is faceless, that is raceless, sexless, non-denominational, and bipartisan. And it's an enemy that we all agree we want to beat. We want to beat, and we're going to beat them. In this time when people are going to move on, the economy is going to be in shambles for who knows how long, there is a green light on the other side of this red light that we're in right now. And I believe that green light is going to be built upon the values that we can enact right now. Values of fairness, kindness, accountability, resilience, respect, courage. If we practice those things right now, when we get out of this, this virus this time might be the one time that brings us all together and unifies us like we have not been in a long time. So yes, let's see if we can make some lemonade out of this lemon that we're in the middle of. Turn a red light into a green light. Just keep living.
Alrighty, so however you feel about McConaughey, if you like him or not, don't have an opinion, that's fine. But I really do appreciate his message here, and I think it's one that we all need to hear. Not just us watching this video, but everybody in the world. I have created an analysis with the soapstone, and I answered some rhetorical choices type questions that I want to model with you guys here related to this text. So if you click this link, hopefully this will help kind of apply some of these terms that we just learned about. It says week 12, remote learning, week 2, Matthew McConaughey address on the coronavirus pandemic, delivered in on March 18th of 2020. Here's the text again. I'm not going to read it. We just watched the video. It is here if you want to take a look at it again. I did a soapstone for this, so if we're looking at it, the speaker, who is the speaker, what is his background? I obviously found that it is Matthew McConaughey, and just some of his credentials. He is an award-winning actor for the Academy Awards. He is a film instructor at UT Austin Moody's College of Communication. I didn't know that until I did my research, so I thought that was interesting. He graduated from the University of Texas. There's the Longhorns. And he is a spokesman for brands like Dolce & Gabbana. I'm probably saying that wrong. And Lincoln. You guys have seen those really rather awkward car commercials with Matthew McConaughey driving a Lincoln. I found this information from biography.com. I found this information to also kind of give some of his credentials or maybe establish his ethos a little bit. Now, the occasion, what is the occasion of this piece or the genesis? Thinking about this question, what was stirring the pot for McConaughey to sit down on his back porch and deliver this speech? This isn't a clear yes or no type of question, but what I think is the occasion is that people are worried, paranoid, and have more questions than ever before. We're kind of all living in this uncertain time, and we don't really know what to do. We're so confused. No one really knows if we're doing some things the right way, and I believe that's why McConaughey did this speech. That's why he sat down and recorded himself. Obviously, it was in March of 2020, and it's related to this COVID-19 pandemic. The audience, who is the intended audience of this piece, and how do I know? Well, I think the intended audience is all of humanity, because he uses phrases like with we to eliminate the fact that we are all in this pandemic together. I know it's all of humanity as well, because he compares the virus to an enemy that impacts all of us, because it is faceless, it is raceless, sexless, non-denominational, and bipartisan, meaning that it's not affiliated with one political party. It's impacting everybody, not just a select group of people. If it's attacking a select group of people, then it is all of humanity as a people. So that is why I addressed humanity, everyone, as the intended audience. And the purpose, why did he write this speech? He wrote this speech, in my opinion, to unite. So there is my purpose statement, to plus a verb, to unite all of the human race to remain positive during the pandemic we are all facing. Take a moment and look at how this purpose statement is different than the occasion. So as far as the occasion goes, I think McConaughey wrote this because people are worried, paranoid, and have more questions than ever before. But that is different than his purpose. His purpose is to unite all of the human race to remain positive during this pandemic because of the occasion, because of the paranoia and the sense of worry that people are facing. So as you can see, the two go hand in hand, but they're not necessarily the exact same thing. You can't have one without the other. The subject is the coronavirus, this COVID-19 pandemic. And the tone, remember, is the speaker's attitude. And we find this through diction, which is word choice plus details or any specific details in the message. I identified his tone as serious, optimistic, and uplifting. I found his tone to be serious when he used phrases like accountability and resilience. Holding each other accountable and being resilient is a very serious matter that he is asking of humanity. So I think that reinforces the serious tone. Same with fairness and kindness. Those are all kind of serious terms. He is optimistic because he is saying things like turning a red light into a green light, which is something I'll address here in just a second. And he is trying to have us make lemonade out of the lemon we are in the middle of. So he is realizing that we are in the lemon or maybe a bitter or harsh situation, but he is optimistic that we can make lemonade out of this situation and kind of find the sweet side of it. And so through that, I believe he is both optimistic and uplifting. I made a list of some rhetorical analysis questions. This first one says, make a list of important word choices or diction that stands out to you, 10 or 15 words. And I think I did 15, but the words I came up with were precautions, coronavirus, beat, enemy, lemonade, unifies, paranoid, resilience, respect, virus, courage, green light, bipartisan, diligence, and care. Out of the words I chose, choose the most impactful word and explain its significance. I said the most important word in the text is unifies because it is the ultimate end goal that McConaughey wants from humanity, for everyone to come together, regardless of race, political party, or gender, to beat this virus. And to beat this virus, we have to unify ourselves in a way that we haven't before. And I think that word just totally illuminates his purpose even more. I don't know if you noticed it, but McConaughey did integrate parallel structure in this speech. And how does he do that? I said he implements parallel structure when speaking on the values of, quote, fairness, kindness, accountability, resilience, respect, and courage to demonstrate that humanity needs to practice all of these values and that one value is not more important than another. They're all equally the same. So he is saying that fairness, kindness, accountability, etc., these are things that we need to all adopt in ourselves to unify us, to overcome this virus. We can't just do one thing and ignore the others. We need to be courageous. We need to be respectful. We need to be resilient. We need to hold each other accountable. We need to be kind, and we need to be fair in order to overcome this obstacle. And lastly, address one moment in the text where McConaughey uses metaphor and explain its significance. Said he uses metaphor twice near the end of the speech when he mentions how humanity can turn this lemon that we are facing into lemonade and how we can change red light to a green light. Lemons, I kind of touched on this earlier. We noticed that lemons are sort of this bitter and sour taste, and he is comparing this pandemic to a bitter lemon. However, out of these lemons comes lemonade, which is something that is sweet and rather enjoyable. Therefore, he is encouraging the people to use these bitter hardships to find the beauty out of life when this pandemic is all said and done. And then lastly, he uses this change this red light to a green light metaphor to symbolize how we are currently at a halt in our world. Schools are closed, non-essential businesses are closed. We are having to socially distance ourselves, halting ourselves, red light. However, that will change and we will continue to go forward, green light, go forward, illuminating this notion that we are halted now, but once we get through it, we will continue to progress in a forward direction. So I hope this kind of breakdown helps you identify definitely these terms with soapstone. And there are many, many other rhetorical choices that he uses in his speech. But I wanted to just focus on those four as they are pretty common in a lot of different types of texts. Now I'm going to turn it over to you. This is your turn to show me your understanding of soapstone and rhetorical choices. So I found this Lou Gehrig farewell to baseball address. I'm asking that you complete the soapstone and answer the rhetorical questions. They are linked right here, and I will pull those up in a second. The speech is short, but it does, quote unquote, pack a punch, if you will. Type on the actual document and submit it to our Google Classroom page underneath the classwork tab in the section labeled Unit 4 Rhetorical Analysis and Remote Learning. The assignment is called the Lou Gehrig's Farewell to Baseball Address Analysis. You click this link here. It will bring up this bad boy. Week 12, Remote Learning, Week 2. Lou Gehrig's Farewell to Baseball Address, Soapstone, and Rhetorical Choices Analysis. Some directions. Some of this can even help you with your soapstone if you think back to what elements need some context in a soapstone. It says, on July 4th, 1939, legendary New York Yankee baseball player Lou Gehrig gave his retirement farewell speech to the fans at Yankee Stadium. To this day, that moment in history is known as Lou Gehrig Day, and the speech is considered to be the most famous baseball speech of all time. Read the speech below and complete the soapstone analysis and answer the questions about the rhetorical choices Lou Gehrig makes or uses to convey his purpose. As you can see, this is the speech right here, so it is short. I'll read through it once. Obviously, you can go back and read it. This is the Farewell to Baseball Address by Lou Gehrig. He says, fans, for the past 2 weeks, you have been reading about the bad break I got. Yet today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of this earth. I have been in ballparks for 17 years and have never received anything but kindness and encouragement from you fans. Look at these grand men. Which of you wouldn't consider it the highlight of his career just to associate with them for even one day? Sure, I'm lucky. Who wouldn't consider it an honor to have known Jacob Ruppert, also the builder of baseball's greatest empire, Ed Barrow, to have spent 6 years with that wonderful little fellow, Miller Huggins, then to have spent the next 9 years with that outstanding leader, that smart student of psychology, the best manager in baseball today, Joe McCarthy. Sure, I'm lucky. When the New York Giants, a team you would give your right arm to beat and vice versa, sends you a gift, that's something. When everybody down to the groundskeeper and those boys in white coats remember you with trophies, that's something. When you have a wonderful mother-in-law who takes sides with you and squabbles with her own daughter, that's something. When you have a father and a mother who work on their lives so you can have an education and build your body, it's a blessing. When you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you dreamed existed, that's the finest I know. So I close in saying that I may have had a tough break, but I have an awful lot to live for. So immediately, I'm not going to ask you questions about this, but the repetition of this phrase, that's something. When so-and-so does this, that's something. When so-and-so does that, that's something. That phrase, that's something, kind of reinforces this idea that he's reflecting on his amazing baseball career because he's thinking about all these times and he's saying that's something to sort of show the importance of these people in his life and how they related to his career. Following that page is then the soapstone. for it. It's the same questions that I did with the McConaughey address. Just this time you fill them in. And then I have a series of 3 analysis questions. They are different than the ones I addressed, but they are very applicable to this text. If you're looking on the slide now, to fill out that speaker piece, we know it's Lou Gehrig, but we need to address more of his credentials. The video here might help you answer that speaker column in the soapstone. It is informative. I'm not going to play it now, but it is linked here for you if you want to take a look at that. So I'm going to take a brief momentary pause, and then we will move on to the last thing for the week. Alrighty, we are back. The last thing of the week is going to be our article of the week for week 12, remote learning week 2. We're still going to talk about COVID-19, but we're going to do it in a different way this week. I found an interesting article in the New York Times, and it's called Humor is Healing. Laughter soothes the nerves during COVID-19 trauma. I'm going to read it in a second. You don't have to stick around and read it with me. It is a shorter piece. I'll kind of zip through it, and then I'll have you go on our classroom page in the classwork tab in the section Unit 4 Rhetorical Analysis and Remote Learning. It's labeled, the assignment is labeled Week 12, Remote Learning Week 2, Article Response. And I have just 2 questions for you today, and these are personal questions, meaning that there is no right or wrong answer, but I want to know why, in your words, is laughter such an important thing during a time of pandemic and trauma that we are in? And how are you remaining optimistic through humor? Use specific examples here to support your idea, but be school appropriate, for goodness sakes. Clicking the link, I'll read it, and then I will send you on your way. Alrighty. This was published on March 24th, 2020, and it's called Humor is Healing. Laughter soothes nerves during COVID-19 trauma. New York. Americans are employing humor as a balm to soothe nerves during the coronavirus pandemic, flocking to new Instagram stars like Quentin Tarantino and sharing Facebook memes about taking off bras and pants and putting on weight in self-quarantine. Late-night TV hosts and hometown comedians are providing a mental health safety net for Americans living amid COVID-19 trauma, and medical experts say humor is a vital part of surviving the cascading catastrophe. We're just trying to find the lighter side of the crisis with articles that tell readers that this is temporary. Let's just get through it together, said Jonathan Jaffe, whose New Jersey-based satirical newsletter, The Jaffe Briefing, has had a 40% spike in readership since the first coronavirus patient died in the United States on February 28th. I'm going to pause. That's really interesting. Satire is a form of humor that often pokes fun at something. And there are satirical article publishers like The Onion and obviously the Jaffe Briefing here. He saw a 40% spike in readership since that first US death related to coronavirus. So I think that shows that people are trying to seek out humor to sort of cope with the trauma associated with this pandemic. Sorry, but I'm going to continue. Snarky but very positive, the Daily Bulletin updates readers on such news as Anheuser-Busch's efforts to switch production from beer to antiseptics. Newark, the Sultan of Sanitizer, the Highness of Hand Hygiene, the Ayatollah of Antiseptic. Someone has to devise a new, snappy nickname now that the King of Beers is mass-producing hand sanitizer. Mental health professionals say humor is a balm for soothing nerves, not just by tickling funny bones, but also decreasing stress hormones. Clinical evidence shows high levels of stress can weaken immune systems. Jokes at a time of crisis, however, should be rooted in commonalities rather than in differences. If not, they risk the resounding criticism directed at comedian Ari Schaefer after he tweeted sarcastic humor about the January death of basketball great Kobe Bryant. Section Mental Armor. At an otherwise grim news conference to update on the state's COVID-19 death toll and infection numbers, Kentucky officials this week showed photographs of sidewalks chalked with lighthearted sayings, and Public Health Commissioner Dr. Stephen Stack told reporters, "Humor is healing." Comedy can serve as a mental armor to ensure safe passage through tragic times, said psychologist Sean Truman of St. Paul, Minnesota. It is a really powerful way to manage the unmanageable, just to make fun of it and to gain control by laughing at it. That's a really powerful psychological move we can make, Truman said. With New York at the epicenter of the U.S. crisis, Governor Andrew Cuomo enlisted comic actor Danny DeVito to drive home the very serious message about self-quarantining. "Stay home," DeVito, age 75, said in a widely aired public service announcement. "We got this virus, this pandemic, and you know young people can get it, and they can transmit it to old people, and the next thing you know, geek, I'm out of here." After production of their late-night television talk shows was shut down, comedians Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, and Trevor Noah are streaming their monologues online. Millions watched as Fallon sat on his front porch and rewarded himself for landing jokes told only to his laptop computer by pressing a button that delivered canned laughter and applause. A recent episode of The Light Show with Stephen Colbert, "We're All in This Together," recorded on Colbert's front porch, featured a mock horse race. One thoroughbred, "Does This Cough Mean Anything?" vied for the lead with "Maybe This Will All Blow Over," and the winner, by 3 lengths, announced the breathless sportscaster, was generalized anxiety. Alrighty, so some of these jokes maybe aren't too funny in this article, but I think the message that Stephen Stack gives here, this public health commissioner, noticing that it's a public health commissioner saying that humor is healing, I think that phrase, that statement holds some weight for us, especially in this time. So do me a favor, read through this article if you haven't, or if you need to reread it, and answer these 2 questions for me on a Google Doc. And when you are done, submit that bad boy, and you are done with your second week of remote learning, week 12 of the semester. I miss you guys so much. Every day I'm thinking about you, and I truly mean that. And I hope that you and yours are staying healthy and staying safe. As we go through this, continue to do those things that you enjoy to do. Continue to find humor. Continue to laugh. Continue to take care of yourselves and take care of your families as well. Let me know if you guys need anything at all. I hope you're doing well. Keep in touch. I'll hear from you next week. And as always, go forth and conquer.